So trust and truth now playing a major role on the federal political scene because of the SNC-Lavalin affair. Let's bring in three colleagues from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Susan Delacourt is a columnist and Parliamentary Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Joel-Denis Bellavance is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. And Robert Fife is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Good to see you all. Our series is called Truth and Trust. And Bob, let me start with you. It's been 6 weeks now since you broke the story of SNC-Lavalin and the allegations involving pressure on Jody Wilson-Raybould and so on. We know the election's still 7 months out, but what role could this story play in shaping the kind of campaign we get? And because it's around this issue of truth and trust, and I think that's what Canadians are watching.
Well, I think the Prime Minister's brand has been hurt by this scandal in two ways. He promised an ethical government and that he would do politics differently. Well, clearly that has not been the case. It's certainly been revealed in this SNC-Lavalin that he hasn't run that ethical government and hasn't been that truthful. He's also hurt, I think, his brand in terms of gender. We've lost 3 women from Liberal, well, 2 from Cabinet and Liberal MP, backbench MP, who said that he yelled at her, and which does not help his brand as Mr. Feminist. So I think he's been damaged a lot, but you know he has a summer to recover. This is not going to go on probably, I think, maybe for another couple of weeks, and then it's going to move. People will move on, and he can get back to campaigning and trying to get people on issues. So it's going to hurt him, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be Mr. Trudeau up against 2 opposition leaders, and whether they can. Their vision for the country is going to be different than his.
Susan, still a fair bit of runway till election day, but is this a lasting problem for the Prime Minister? The way we get another story today about disputes between he and Jody Wilson-Raybould involving Supreme Court appointments and nominees. Do you think it fades away, or is it a lasting problem?
I think Bob sort of alluded to this. The interesting thing about this story is the blanks in it and how people have filled in the blanks. If I were in the Prime Minister's office, that's what I would be thinking about right now is, as Bob said, there are some people who feel disappointed in what the Prime Minister failed to deliver on feminism or on Indigenous relations. Everybody has found their own disappointment in this story. And that, I think there are Conservatives who are never going to vote for him anyway. There are New Democrats who are never going to vote for him anyway. But I think what the story awoke in people was a sense of disappointment among Liberals. And you saw all the damage control measures have been aimed at Liberals. They're not aimed at trying to get new Conservative voters over. It's because this story made Liberals nervous.
Joel-Denis, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Bob that the brand has been affected by this, and what we've seen so far from the Prime Minister is that he's not good at playing defense when it is to defend his story and all that. He plays defense really badly, and that if that trend continues up until the election, this Prime Minister now will have a record to defend on many files: environment, pipeline, the economy, national unity, and this. So it adds to the problems for the Prime Minister. But I think that story will probably be present in some ways until the next election campaign. For one reason, the Ethics Commissioner is investigating, and he clearly set out that he will take probably 6 to 8 months if the health problems that he has right now is not long term. And so his report could fall into everybody's lap when people are actually going set to vote. So that problems will probably be resurrected in some manner, even though it fades away in the summer at some point before the election.
We saw them trying to change the channel with the budget, getting back to sort of bread and butter issues around the economy. Bob, as we look ahead to the kind of campaign it might be, and we deal with these issues of truth and trust and so on, economic anxieties are there for a lot of Canadians. It's a huge issue. What role do you think it'll play in the conversation around choices, conversation around options for Canadians?
Well, I think bread and butter issues are always the most important issue for most voters. We live in more of a bubble, and we're all interested in intricacies of what goes on. I mean, the difference in the Jody Wilson-Raybould story is that it actually hit the street and people are talking about it. But the bottom line is that people are going to ask themselves, am I better off financially with a Justin Trudeau government or would I be better off with an Andrew Scheer government or Jagmeet Singh NDP? And there doesn't seem to be a lot of dissatisfaction, at least in the polls that we've seen, with the way the government has handled the economy. But, you know, if there's a bad downturn in the economy, then they will wear it.
Susan, what do you think?
There's an interesting divide between Liberals and Conservatives on short-term and long-term thinking, and whether the voters are doing that. It's the Liberals want people to think long-term about the climate change, and and short-term about economy and deficits. You know that Conservatives are the other way. They want. We heard Andrew Scheer talking over the weekend. You know, balanced budget. He wants short-term on the economy. You know, your wallet,
Right.
what's in your pocketbook, and don't worry about the climate change. That's some other day. So they almost have sort of a reverse of positions there too, and I think it's going to be up to the voters whether they are feeling short-term or long-term when they go to the ballot box.
I think we're going to see some polling next week in our program here, Joel-Denis. That the whole divide between the Conservatives and the Liberals seems to be around, when it comes to managing the economy, is the whole deficit argument. Yeah. Liberals have sort of normalized it, running deficits. The Conservatives still think it's a bad thing, and I think the polling is going to show us that Canadians haven't bought the notion that it's terrible to run a deficit. They're Liberals
they
still
are in their own lives.
So I mean, is it too early to say who might have the upper hand on an issue like the economy and affordability? And
I think the Liberals have somewhat the upper hand because of the budget they've tabled in the 3 previous years. They invested a lot of money, and the economy created 900,000 new jobs. So that's still quite an impressive record. Now, in the last budget, I think we've clearly seen the Liberals making a bet that Canadians are not that worried about deficit spending because it's going to go on for a little while, and they have no plan to bring back a balanced budget. And they are making investments that probably will please some key segment of the electorate. Housing, for example, helping young families to buy a new house, in terms of training as well. And also seniors, giving them some money if they want to keep working. They're not going to be penalized. So,
but you only have to look at Ontario. Every time they cut something in Ontario,
Exactly.
people blow up in fury.
Right.
The Liberals can say, you see, if
That's
you get
what
an Andrew
happens,
Scheer
yeah.
government, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, is it too early to say we can see the makings of a ballot box question? We're still, if I could say it, I'd be able to ask it. A ballot box question. Is it going to be, as it is in most campaigns, is it going to be the economy? Is it too early to say that?
Well, I think it's going to come down to the old things of hope and change and that, but I think that's a valid point. I think this election, I've covered a few of them, I think will be different in, I think there's a more active role by the provinces in this one as well, that if Jason Kenney wins in
Right.
Alberta, he will be an opponent. The Prime Minister's biggest opponents may not be the two people on the debate stage with him, but the premiers all over the country, and they could work for good or could work for...
As we've said, Doug
Yeah.
Ford's already doing it. He's
Right.
already...
just to add to that, the Quebec Premier, François Legault, has said that he wants to extract as much concessions from all the leaders leading up to the election. So
I've never heard
Is that a surprise?
I've never heard a Quebec premier say that.
but he said it probably many times.
Did he mention anything about a knife to the throat?
Not yet, but it's 7 months out. Right.
And Bob was alluding to the circumstances in Ontario. In Quebec as well, we went through a series of austerity years under the previous Liberal provincial government, and people, threw them out in the last election. So this is a movie where some Quebec voters have seen, and they may be tempted to stay with the Liberals, who will not impose cuts federally. At least.
Finish on you, Bob. Does that make it a challenging path for Andrew Scheer to
I
convince
think
people that
yes.
cuts make sense if he can deliver something in return? If he says, I'm going to do this and try and balance the books and still try to provide tax breaks. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to, and look, we're too early to say, but I'd like to see some meat in terms of conservative policy, because we haven't seen very much, and that's where you're going to be able to contrast yourself with the Liberals and say, look, I can be better for you, for your pocketbook, and if he can do that, he has a good chance. I don't rule that out, but but I haven't seen any evidence of that he's putting anything in the window that people can say, hey, you know what? I think I might give this guy a chance.
All right. Thank you all for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.